Healing doesn't always look like light and laughter. Sometimes it looks like stillness, silence, and the strange peace of not reacting when you could have. There's a quiet kind of healing that never makes noise, that doesn't post itself online, that doesn't come with certificates or rituals. It's the healing that happens when you start noticing you're not breaking anymore. You're bending and coming back stronger. You're not chasing closure. You're creating peace. And maybe you don't even see it yet. Most people think healing is dramatic, like a movie moment where everything finally makes sense. But real healing, as Carl Jung Shadow Work shows us, is subtle, almost invisible. It's when your triggers don't explode like they used to, when silence doesn't scare you anymore, when you stop needing to prove you're good and simply start being whole. So in this episode, we're going to explore 7 signs that you've already healed more than you realize. But this isn't just theory, it's practice. Throughout the next hour, we'll walk together through reflection and application, the same principles Jung used to call individuation, the slow reunion between who you are and who you were always meant to be. You'll learn to see the subtle changes, the ones that don't make headlines, but quietly change your entire life. Because healing isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of awareness. It's not that your past stops hurting, it's that it stops owning you. Carl Jung once said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's what we'll do here. We'll make the quiet progress you've been ignoring visible again. We'll hold a mirror to your soul, so you can finally see how far you've already come. So, take a breath. Let everything outside this moment fade. You don't have to rush your healing. You don't have to prove it. You just have to notice. Notice the small shifts, the subtle evidence that your soul has been working quietly, patiently, underneath it all. Because when healing is real, it doesn't make you louder. It makes you softer and deeper. By the end of this hour, you'll not only recognize the 7 signs within yourself, but you'll have practices real, simple, Jungian tools to keep nurturing them. So let's begin. Here's how your soul tells you, without words, that you're already healing more than you think. Loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of connection with yourself. There's a moment in healing when silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like home. At first, being alone used to sting, like the room was too quiet, like the air pressed in on your chest, like you needed a voice, a message, a distraction to keep you company. You'd scroll through endless noise, just to avoid hearing the sound of your own thoughts. But slowly, almost without noticing, something began to shift. The stillness stopped feeling empty. You started to find comfort in the hum of your own breath. You stopped filling every silence with sound. And one day, you realized you could sit in a cafe, or drive down an empty road, or walk by yourself at sunset, and not feel lonely, just peaceful, present. That's the first sign that your healing has taken root. You can be alone and not feel abandoned. Carl Jung believed that solitude is the birthplace of integration. He wrote that when we withdraw from noise, the unconscious begins to speak, and it rarely speaks in words. It speaks in symbols, sensations, quiet nudges from the depths of the soul. But most people never hear them, because they're afraid of silence. They mistake stillness for emptiness. They think that if they stop moving, they'll disappear. Yet silence doesn't erase you. It reveals you. It shows you the self that lives beneath the noise, the one that isn't constantly performing, pleasing, or pretending. That's why solitude feels uncomfortable at first. because it strips away every costume the ego wears. It leaves you naked with your truth. But if you can stay there long enough, something sacred happens. You stop being afraid of your own company. You realize that alone was never the opposite of love. It was the doorway to it. In the early stages of healing, people crave distractions. They fill every gap with someone else's energy. But when healing deepens, the craving fades. You begin to notice beauty in ordinary things. The sound of rain, the smell of coffee, the sunlight touching the wall. You start to feel connected again, not to people, but to being. That's the quiet shift from loneliness to solitude. The moment you stop needing external validation to confirm your existence, you stop searching for mirrors in other people's eyes. You start seeing yourself clearly in your own. Jung would call this a reconciliation between the ego and the self. The ego, in fear, says, "I need others to know I exist." The self, in wisdom, whispers, "I exist because I am." When you can rest in that awareness, you carry peace that no one else can give or take away. That peace becomes your gravity. And ironically, when you no longer need company, the right people begin to find you. Because solitude isn't isolation, it's energetic clarity. When your energy stops leaking through loneliness, it becomes magnetic through presence. People feel it. That calm confidence in your silence, that sense of ease in your eyes. You no longer pull, you attract. Asterisk, the privilege of a lifetime, Jung said, is to become who you truly are. And you can't become who you are without meeting yourself first, in silence, in solitude, in those spaces where no one's watching. Healing begins not when someone finally stays, but when you finally do. Reflection practice, learning to be with yourself. Tonight, try this. Turn off the music. Put your phone face down. Sit by a window or a dimly lit room somewhere quiet. For 5 minutes, do nothing but breathe. Notice the discomfort, the urge to reach for something. Then, instead of fighting it, greet it. Say quietly in your mind, "You're safe here. I'm listening." Let whatever arises, boredom, anxiety, peace, just exist. Watch it without trying to change it. When the mind starts to wander, bring it back with a single question. What part of me am I meeting right now? Write down one sentence after, just one, about what surfaced in that silence. That's your dialogue with the self. That's where real healing begins. Over time, this simple practice rewires the nervous system. It teaches your body that stillness is safe, that your own presence is enough, and that being alone was never loneliness. It was initiation. When you can sit with yourself and feel peace, you've already stepped beyond the old version of you that needed the world to fill the silence. And that's how you know you've healed more than you realize. You know you've grown when what once triggered chaos inside you now only stirs curiosity. There was a time when one text, one word, one glance could send your whole system spiraling. Someone's tone would tighten your chest. A delay in their reply would make your mind explode with stories. A small rejection would feel like an echo of every wound you've ever carried. And before you could even think, you'd already be drowning, reacting, explaining, defending, apologizing for emotions you didn't choose. That was the old you, the one living in reaction, the one whose nervous system was ruled by memory, not by presence. But now, something has changed. You still feel the trigger. You still sense that familiar sting, but it doesn't own you anymore. It passes through, like thunder fading behind distant hill. You can feel the wave rise, but you don't become the wave. You breathe, you stay, and that's when you know healing has entered your body. Carl Jung called this the moment when the shadow begins to integrate. Because triggers aren't random, they are mirrors, flashes of light revealing the unhealed corners of your psyche. Every emotional surge is your unconscious saying, "This pain still lives here." But when you stop running from it, when you can look at it with awareness instead of defense, you reclaim the power you once gave away. Think of a time someone said something careless, maybe a tone that used to cut you open, but this time, you heard it, and instead of collapsing, you felt yourself observe. You noticed the feeling rise, anger, sadness, disappointment, but you stayed conscious. You watched the emotion move through you, like a wave moving through water, you being the ocean itself. That space, that pause, is healing in real time, because between stimulus and response, there is a sacred breath, and in that breath lives your freedom. Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Every trigger you bring into awareness is one less fate you have to live out. And slowly, your relationships start to change, arguments soften, patterns dissolve, not because others became gentler, but because your nervous system did. You stopped needing everyone to walk on eggshells around your pain. You learned to hold your own emotions without making them someone else's responsibility. That is emotional maturity, and that is liberation. When triggers no longer control you, you become both the storm and the calm. You can hold your rage without lashing out. You can feel sadness without drowning. You can say, "I'm hurt," without letting it define who you are. That's the difference between a person reacting from wounds and a person responding from wisdom. And something subtle happens next. You start to notice that the people who used to drain you no longer have that power. Their words don't pierce the same way. Their silence doesn't scare you. You start choosing peace over proof, not because you don't care, but because your nervous system finally learned that calm is safer than chaos. The goal of healing isn't to feel good, Jung would remind us. It's to feel everything fully without falling apart. And that's where you are now. You no longer fear emotion. You let it move through you, like weather passing through an open sky. You have become the sky, vast enough to contain it all. Reflection practice, the 90-second rule. Next time you feel triggered, don't text back, don't explain, don't fix. Just breathe. Close your eyes. Let the feeling rise inside your body. Notice where it lives. Maybe it's a knot in your chest, a heat in your throat, a weight behind your eyes. Stay with it for 90 seconds. No story, no blame, just sensation. Neuroscience shows that most emotional waves last less than 2 minutes if we don't feed them with thought. So ride that wave. Watch it crest, crash, and dissolve. Then ask yourself quietly, what is this emotion trying to teach me about me? Write down the first honest word that comes up. Don't analyze, just witness. That's shadow work in motion. Not fighting your emotions, but letting them reveal you. Over time, this small practice rewires the mind. It teaches your body that feeling is not equal to danger. That emotion is not equal to loss of control. You start to trust yourself again. Not because life gets easier, but because you can now meet it without flinching. So, the next time someone says something that would have shattered you years ago, and you simply breathe, smile, and stay calm, remember this, that calm isn't apathy. It's mastery. It's the quiet evidence that you've healed more than you realize. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a part of yourself, but by embracing your contradictions. Carl Jung. There was a time when you needed life to be simple, right or wrong, black or white, love or pain, success or failure. You needed clear edges because the space between them felt too uncertain. Ambiguity used to scare you. It made you feel out of control, like standing in fog with no clear ground to walk on. But now, you can breathe inside that fog. You no longer rush to define it. You've started to realize that both things can be true, and that's okay. You can miss someone deeply and still know you're better apart. You can be grateful for the lesson and still grieve the loss. You can love your life and still want more. That's not confusion, that's capacity. It means your heart has stretched wide enough to hold the paradox without shattering. Carl Jung called this process the union of opposites, the meeting of shadow and light, of instinct and intellect, of masculine and feminine, of love and fear, inside one conscious being. He said that the self, the true, integrated self, is born when these opposites stop fighting for dominance and start learning how to dance. When you were younger, you thought peace meant perfection, a life without contradiction, a self without conflict. But real peace is when you can sit with the tension between opposites and not need one side to disappear. When you can say, I'm sad, but I'm safe. I'm angry, but I'm aware. I'm uncertain, but I'm still here. That's when balance stops being a performance and becomes a state of being. This kind of balance isn't fragile, it's alive, because wholeness isn't symmetry, it's inclusion. It's the strength to hold the chaos without collapsing, to let both light and dark coexist inside you, without letting either define you. The world tells you to choose. Be confident or humble, logical or emotional, strong or gentle. But the truth is, you're all of it. And healing happens when you stop editing yourself to fit the expectations of a smaller mind. At first, this realization can feel heavy because it means you're no longer living from a single identity. You can't say, I'm only this kind of person. Some days, you're the ocean. Some days, you're the shore. Some days, you're the storm that connects them. And yet, all of them are you. You've grown strong enough to let your contradictions coexist without tearing each other apart. That's evolution. Not away from paradox, but into it. Jung once said that tension between opposites is the very energy that drives transformation. Without tension, there is no growth. A bow only releases its arrow when it has learned how to hold the stretch, and the soul only releases its wisdom when it learns how to hold opposites without snapping. So, if you've noticed yourself thinking lately, I'm not sure who I am anymore, take a breath. You're not lost. You're just expanding. You're becoming complex enough to contain your own contradictions, to be both dreamer and realist, lover and loner, human and divine. That's not confusion. That's integration. Asterisk, the paradox, Jung wrote, is one of our most valued spiritual possessions. Because paradox keeps the soul alive, it humbles the mind and deepens the heart. And the moment you stop fighting your contradictions, you stop fighting yourself. That's what healing does. It makes peace where war used to live. Reflection practice, the mirror of paradox. Tonight, try this. Take a notebook and draw 2 columns. At the top of one, write, "This is true about me." At the top of the other, write, "This is also true." Then, list your opposites. Maybe you're disciplined and lazy, caring and selfish, strong and scared, quiet and loud. Don't fix them. Don't justify them. Just let them sit together on the page. Then read them slowly, out loud. Breathe in between each pair. Feel how your body softens when you realize you don't have to choose anymore. That's integration. That's the tension of opposites becoming harmony. Over time, this practice dissolves self-judgment. It reminds your nervous system that you are not one thing, you are everything in motion. And when you can see that clearly, you stop breaking every time life bends you. Because the man or woman who can hold opposites without running from either side has already found peace. What you project outward, you meet as fate. Carl Jung, there was a time when the opinions of others felt like mirrors. Every reflection shaping the way you saw yourself. A single criticism could cut deep. A silent disapproval could linger for days. You carried the weight of other people's moods, like they were proof of your worth. And every time someone misunderstood you, you rushed to explain. Every time someone pulled away, you asked, "What did I do wrong?" You lived on the edge of other people's stories, forgetting your own. But something changed. Somewhere along this path of healing, you stopped needing everyone to see you clearly. You realized that most people aren't seeing you at all. They're seeing their own reflection. Through the fog of their unhealed mind, you began to understand that projection is not perception. What they see in you is often what they cannot face in themselves. That awareness, it's freedom. Because once you know this, you stop taking things personally. You stop translating every cold glance into a self-critique. You stop confusing someone's shadow for your responsibility. You no longer crumble under the weight of someone else's narrative. You hold your center, steady, grounded, present. You've learned the sacred art of not absorbing. Carl Jung believed that projection is the psyche's way of showing us what we've yet to integrate. When we can't hold a part of ourselves, we throw it outward onto friends, lovers, leaders, even strangers. We call others selfish, arrogant, cold, when those qualities are silently waiting for recognition within us. So when you stop being controlled by projections, you've done two kinds of healing at once. You've stopped believing in others' projections of you, and you've stopped projecting your own shadow onto them. You see, the old version of you used to shrink every time someone disapproved. You twisted yourself to fit the image they preferred. You'd play small just to stay safe inside their approval. But the new you doesn't perform anymore. You can listen to feedback without worshiping it. You can hear criticism without collapsing. You can sense someone's discomfort with your truth and still speak it anyway. Because you've learned that protecting your energy is not rejection, it's respect. When you stop letting other people's projections define you, your boundaries stop being walls. They become filters. You still let love in. You still stay open, but you no longer let confusion enter, disguised as connection. You understand that empathy doesn't mean absorbing someone's chaos. It means staying anchored enough to hold space without losing balance. That's emotional sovereignty. That's what self-mastery looks like in daily life. Asterisk, everything that irritates us about others, Jung said, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So when someone misjudges you now, you pause. You ask, what are they showing me about themselves? And maybe, just maybe, you see your own reflection in their reaction too. Because sometimes, healing isn't silence. It's seeing clearly. It's realizing that what once wounded you was never truly about you. You've grown immune to projections, not because you've built armor, but because you've built awareness. And awareness doesn't block energy, it transforms it. When someone tries to hand you their shadow, you don't catch it anymore. You simply see it for what it is, an unhealed story looking for a host. And with compassion, you let it pass. That's not indifference, that's mastery. Reflection practice, the mirror exercise. Tonight, take 5 minutes. Think of one recent moment where someone's words or behavior hurt you. Close your eyes, and instead of replaying what they said, ask yourself 2 questions. 1. What might this person be projecting onto me? 2. What emotion inside me reacted to that projection? Notice how both answers belong to different worlds, theirs and yours. Write down 1 sentence for each, 1 for their story, 1 for your truth. Then, silently repeat to yourself, I return what is not mine, I reclaim what is. Feel the separation, the energetic clarity. As your system recalibrates, that is how you stay open without being invaded. That is how you keep empathy without surrendering sovereignty. Over time, this practice rewires your emotional boundaries. You begin to sense energy before words. You start trusting your intuition again. You know when it's your pain and when it's someone else's shadow. And that awareness, that quiet discernment, becomes your shield and your freedom. So, the next time someone's opinion stings, pause before believing it. Breathe. Return to your center, because if their words can't reach the peace inside you, you've already healed more than you realize. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Carl Jung, there's something mysterious that happens. When the soul begins to heal, the language of your dreams changes. At first, your dreams used to feel chaotic, like fragments of fear, replays of old pain, endless chases through corridors that looked like memory and nightmare combined. You'd wake up tense, heart pounding, unsure what your mind was trying to tell you. But lately, something feels different. The images are softer now, the colors warmer. Even when the dream feels strange, it carries meaning instead of panic. You wake up not shaken, but curious. That's how the unconscious speaks when it's finally being heard. Carl Jung believed dreams were not random. They were messages from the psyche, symbols rising from the deep to restore balance between what we know and what we ignore. He called them letters from the self, the part of us that never sleeps. And when your healing begins, those letters start to change tone. The unconscious no longer shouts, it starts to whisper. In the early stages of pain, the dream attacks, monsters, losses, storms, falling. Each image is the soul's cry for integration, the psyche saying, please, see this part of me. But when that part is finally acknowledged in waking life, when you no longer run from your anger, your fear, your loneliness, the monsters soften, they turn into teachers. They start guiding instead of chasing. That's how you know your inner world is transforming. Maybe now your dreams show doors instead of walls, journeys instead of escapes. Maybe a recurring nightmare has stopped. Maybe you find yourself walking peacefully through the very place that once terrified you. These are not coincidences. They are symbols of integration, because the unconscious, once hostile, has become your collaborator. You're no longer split against yourself. Jung said that dreams balance the conscious mind, like nature restores equilibrium to a wounded ecosystem. If you've been too rational, the dream brings emotion. If you've been too emotional, the dream brings structure. If you've ignored the soul, the dream brings symbols too strange to ignore. Healing doesn't silence your dreams. It changes their rhythm. They stop screaming for attention and start weaving meaning. Sometimes, your dreams won't be peaceful, but they'll feel honest. You'll wake up and think, I don't understand it, but I know it's true. That's the mark of Jungian transformation, truth that transcends language. It's like the soul saying, Now that you're listening, I can speak in images again. When this happens, don't rush to decode everything. Dreams aren't puzzles to be solved. They're mirrors to be felt. Instead of asking, "What does this mean?" ask, "How did I feel when it happened?" The emotion is the message. If you dreamed of drowning, perhaps you're ready to feel emotions you once suppressed. If you dreamed of flying, perhaps you're finally free from something that once confined you. If you dreamed of an old house, maybe it's your psyche inviting you back to explore forgotten rooms. The symbols will differ for everyone, but the feeling of shift is universal. You'll notice, too, that synchronicities begin to appear. Dreams start echoing waking life. You think of someone, and they call. You see an image, and it mirrors a dream from weeks ago. These are not accidents. They are the psyche aligning itself, the conscious and unconscious learning how to dance again. You are being reunited with yourself. The dream is the guide to the innermost center of the soul, Jung said. It shows us what the ego has refused to see. So when your dreams begin to change, it means you're finally seeing what the ego was too afraid to face and finding peace in it. Healing has reached the invisible layers of you, the parts no one else can witness, the sacred ground where your soul speaks only in symbols. Reflection practice, listening to the language of dreams. Tonight, before you sleep, don't scroll, don't distract, just sit in the quiet for a moment. Place your hand over your heart and whisper inwardly, "I'm listening. If there's something my soul wants to show me tonight, I'm ready to see it." Then, when you wake, don't rush. Stay still. Before the world floods in, write down the first image, word, or feeling you remember. Don't analyze, just record. A color, a sound, a face, a symbol. Do this for a week. Watch the patterns emerge. You'll start to see a quiet narrative forming, your unconscious gently mapping your evolution. That's Carl Jung Shadow Work at its most intimate form, not in therapy rooms or spiritual quotes, but in the silent cinema of your own mind. Over time, you'll stop treating your dreams as random and start treating them as guidance. You'll see that even while you sleep, your soul is still working for you, rearranging, releasing, revealing. And when you realize that, you'll understand the truth. Healing doesn't rest, it only changes form. Even in the dark of night, your psyche keeps creating light. When the inner voice speaks, it often whispers first in dreams. So listen, because the moment your dreams start to change, you can be certain your soul already has. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. There comes a moment in every healing journey when the war inside you begins to quiet. For years, you fought yourself. Your anger, your jealousy, your selfishness, your sadness. You divided your soul into sides, the parts you showed the world and the parts you buried. You told yourself, this part is good, that part is bad. This emotion is spiritual, that one is shameful. And you built a life on internal exile. But no one wins a war against themselves. Every victory over your shadow was a wound to your wholeness. At first, you called it discipline. Then you called it healing. But somewhere deep down, you knew it was resistance. The fear of seeing who you really are when all the masks fall. And then one day, you got tired of running from your darkness, tired of pretending to be only light. You stopped trying to fix yourself and started to understand yourself. And that's when the inner war began to end. Carl Jung called this the integration of the shadow, the moment when the unconscious is no longer your enemy, but your greatest teacher. He said, the shadow is 90% pure gold. That means that everything you reject The rage, the envy, the desire, the fear, hides the raw energy of your potential. When you finally face it without judgment, it transforms from poison into power. Maybe for the first time, you allowed yourself to feel anger without labeling it as wrong. You saw that anger wasn't cruelty. It was truth protecting its boundaries. You allowed your sadness to speak without rushing to silence it. You realized it wasn't weakness. It was love that had nowhere left to go. You stopped editing your emotions and began to listen to them. That's how peace begins. Not by silencing the chaos, but by learning its language. Healing doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. You stop trying to be the better version and start being the whole one. You start seeing your patterns, not as punishments, but as invitations. The parts you used to shame become the parts that keep you human, and the voice inside you that once attacked you becomes the one that comforts you. That's what self-compassion really is. Not pity, but partnership. There's a deep calm that comes when you no longer need to prove your goodness. You realize that your flaws aren't stains to erase. They're brush strokes in your painting, and suddenly, you stop needing the world's forgiveness because you've finally given it to yourself. The war ends not with victory, but with integration. The light and the dark shake hands. The heart and the mind stop arguing, and what remains is silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. Asterisk, I am not what happened to me. Jung said, I am what I choose to become. When you stop fighting yourself, you stop living as a reaction to your past and start living as a response to your soul. That's the real freedom, to act from consciousness instead of conditioning. You no longer need to suppress emotion to feel spiritual or hide your imperfections to feel worthy. You begin to embody both heaven and earth. You understand that your soul doesn't want purity, it wants wholeness. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be light, you become radiant. Because your energy is no longer divided, wholeness has a glow that perfection never will. Reflection practice. Meeting your shadow. Tonight, find a quiet space. Sit in dim light. Not total darkness. Not full brightness. The place between both. Take a deep breath and imagine a part of you you've always rejected, sitting in front of you. Maybe it's your anger, your jealousy, your craving for attention, your guilt. Don't push it away. Just look at it. Notice its posture, its eyes, its weight. Then ask softly, what are you trying to protect? Wait. Listen. The answer may come as a word, an image, or just a feeling. When it arrives, say quietly, thank you. You can rest now. This simple ritual teaches your nervous system that your darkness is not danger. It's data. It's a message. And once the message is heard, the emotion no longer needs to shout. That's how integration happens, through attention, not resistance. When you can sit with every part of yourself and not need to fix it, you've already won the only battle that ever mattered. Because the moment you stop fighting yourself, you free up all the energy that was once spent hiding, and you begin to live fully, fiercely, freely. That's when people start to feel it in you, that calm, grounded presence that doesn't flinch at imperfection. Because peace isn't the absence of shadow, it's the friendship with it. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. But once you do, nothing can terrify you anymore. The least of things with meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. Carl Jung. There's a moment after the storm when you realize the silence isn't empty anymore. It's full of life, of subtle beauty, of quiet purpose. You start waking up without dread. You drink your coffee slower. You stop asking, "What's next?" and start whispering, "What matters?" That shift, almost invisible, is the soul returning home. It's the final sign of deep healing. You begin to live with meaning again. For a long time, life felt mechanical, one task blending into the next, everything gray, no matter how colorful it looked. You kept moving because stopping hurt. You achieved, performed, helped, produced, but deep inside, it all felt hollow. You had goals, but no direction. Success, but no substance. Movement, but no meaning. And the scariest part was, you couldn't remember when you lost it. Carl Jung said that when meaning disappears, the soul doesn't die, it goes underground. It waits for you in symbols, in dreams, in silence, until you're ready to meet it again. And that meeting, that reunion with purpose, is not a flash of revelation, it's a quiet remembering. A remembering of who you are beneath achievement, beneath fear, beneath expectation. It's not something you find, it's something you return to. You begin to feel drawn again, not pushed. Instead of chasing, you follow a pull, a curiosity, a whisper that says, This is what life was trying to show you all along." You start to notice the little alignments, the people who enter right on time, the conversations that feel like déjà vu, the work that doesn't drain you but expands you. Meaning doesn't scream, it hums. It vibrates beneath ordinary moments, and you can only hear it. When you've stopped running from yourself, when you live from meaning, you stop needing the world to validate your path. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start feeling, "This is true." That's the difference between motivation and alignment. Motivation needs pressure. Alignment flows. And healing, real healing, always ends with alignment. Because once you make peace with your past, your energy is finally free to move toward what calls you next. Jung called this stage individuation, the lifelong process of becoming the self. He said that true meaning arises when the conscious and the unconscious move in the same direction, when your thoughts, your emotions, and your deeper essence stop competing and start cooperating. That's when everything begins to make sense. Not because life gets easier, but because it becomes coherent. Maybe now you find yourself drawn to create again, to write, to paint, to build, not to impress, but to express. Maybe you feel called to help others, not to save them, but to share what you've learned by surviving. You start to sense that everything you've endured wasn't random, it was preparation. And suddenly, your past stops feeling like a curse and starts feeling like curriculum. The pain that once broke you becomes the language through which you can reach others. That's what Jung meant by transformation, turning suffering into service, chaos into consciousness. Meaning doesn't come from grand missions, it comes from presence. It's in the way you listen when someone speaks, in the way you cook your meal with attention, in the way you look at the sky and remember you're alive. Healing reconnects you to that sacred simplicity. You begin to live as if every breath has purpose, not because you know the future, but because you're finally here. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Carl Jung. You've spent years trying to find your place in the world, but now you see the world was never missing your place. It was missing your presence, and presence only returns when meaning does. Reflection practice, the meaning map. Take a blank page. At the top, write, "What gives my life meaning right now?" Then draw 3 circles that overlap like a Venn diagram. In the first circle, write, "What I love." In the second, "What I'm naturally drawn to." In the third, what serves something larger than me? Where they overlap, write one word, any word that feels alive. It could be teaching, healing, art, truth, connection. Don't force it. Just feel it. That overlap, that intersection, is where meaning lives. It's where yourself is calling you. Then, close your eyes and whisper inwardly, I am ready to live from here. Feel how your body softens when you say that. That softness is trust. Trust that you no longer need to chase a life of importance because you're already living a life of meaning. And from that place, the smallest actions start to feel sacred again. Even washing the dishes becomes devotion. Even breathing feels like participation in something vast. That's what happens when the self wakes up within you. Life stops being a question and starts being a prayer. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. And that's what you've been doing all along. Every heartbreak, every silence, every night of shadow, it was all guiding you back here, to meaning, to wholeness, to yourself. When you begin to live with meaning again, you don't return to who you were. You arrive as who you've always been. But finally awake, that's when you realize you haven't just healed, you've come home. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. And yet, on the other side of that pain, there is a peace so deep that words fall silent before it. That peace isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just lives quietly inside you, like a soft pulse, reminding you that you made it through. You've walked through every stage, the solitude that no longer hurts, the emotions that no longer rule you, the paradoxes you can finally hold, the projections that can't reach you, the dreams that have started to heal you, the shadow that now sits beside you, and the meaning that has returned to light your way. 7 signs, but really, 7 thresholds of the same awakening. Healing was never about becoming perfect. It was about becoming whole. And wholeness isn't something you achieve. It's something you remember. It was always there, waiting beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the versions of you that you built just to survive. You were never broken. You were only becoming conscious. There's a quiet miracle that happens when you finally stop fighting life. You start to see how everything, even the pain, was conspiring to bring you home. The heartbreaks that cracked you open, the silences that forced you inward, the losses that stripped you of illusion, they weren't endings. They were entries. Every wound became a doorway. Every shadow became a teacher. Every fall became a descent into wisdom. That's what Carl Jung Shadow Work has always been about. Not rejecting darkness, but transforming it into depth. The wound is the place where the light enters you. That line, though often attributed to Rumi, echoes perfectly what Jung meant by individuation, the merging of all opposites inside you until nothing is left to divide. The moment you stop running from what hurts, the moment you turn toward your own darkness with compassion, that's when you stop searching for light and start becoming it. And so, if you find yourself in a quiet season, if life feels like it's slowing down, if solitude has replaced noise, trust it. It means the soul is rearranging itself. It means something inside you is integrating. It means you're healing, even if you can't see it yet. Healing isn't a destination. It's a rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes still, but always forward. In the language of Jung, you've stepped into the great work, the art of individuation, becoming one with yourself and allowing that wholeness to ripple into everything you touch. When you live from that place, love feels different, work feels different, silence feels sacred. because you're no longer trying to extract meaning from life. You're giving it. Take a breath. Look around. The same world that once felt heavy now feels spacious. The same sky, the same light, but somehow it's clearer now because you're seeing it through healed eyes. You're not standing at the end of something. You're standing at the beginning of something deeper. The next chapter of your journey isn't about fixing. It's about creating. Creating from fullness. Creating from truth. Creating from the peace that comes when you've met every part of yourself and said, I'm still here. A gentle invitation. If this message found you today, maybe it's because you were ready to hear that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm proud of you. Let that whisper sink in. Let it stay. And if you know someone still fighting the same war you once did, send them this light. Because when one soul heals, it gives permission for others to begin. Asterisk, the privilege of a lifetime, Jung said, is to become who you truly are. And maybe now, you're beginning to understand what that means. You've come home to yourself, and from here, every sunrise, every breath, every small act of awareness is the continuation of that homecoming. This is Inner Balance Psychology. Thank you for walking this path with us. If this message resonated, share it with someone whose soul is quietly trying to heal. And if you'd like to go deeper, join us in the next series, The Journey of Individuation, Becoming Whole in a Divided World. Until then, breathe, be gentle, and remember, healing is not about becoming new. It's about remembering you were whole all along.